Hello, we are Group 6, and this is our presentation on Mr. Burns by Anne Washburn. Today, we are going to go over our synopsis and logline, major characters in the play, script and story, production pitch, and conclusion. Mr. Burns explains the story of a group of survivors waiting out the plague after the mass failure of nuclear power plants across the country. They reimagine an episode of The Simpsons, Cape Fear, to be exact, and examine the way the story has changed right after the plague, 7 years later, and 75 years into the future. Through the years, we see the survivors, through a theater troupe, explain and try to find a reason to live in a harsh and unforgiving world where everything you love is gone. Our theme is storytelling is a means to survival and evolution, with tales being altered by time. And here are our major characters in the story. First, we have Matt. He is the biggest Simpsons fan and contributes a lot to the recreation of the episode. Then we have Sam, who is a problem solver, originally from a small town. Gibson is a gentle spirit and a member of a Gilbert and Sullivan society. He is new to the group in the first act, and then becomes integrated later on. Colleen is a mother who tends to keep to herself, but she can also be easily angered. Maria is compassionate and is probably the least informed about The Simpsons. Jenny is the second biggest Simpsons fan, and she is very energetic and contributive. And Quincy is an actor brought in to be in the play in Act 2. So for our script and story, we are going to go over 3 main points, one for each act. We have the impact of pop culture, which is Act 1, conveying commercials in Act 2, and the dark shift in Act 3. First, we will go over the impact of pop culture and how that relates to the story of Mr. Burns. This quote is from the first act of our play and highlights our characters remembering and reminiscing on one of their favorite Simpsons episodes. There are some tattoos, because you see shots of him in prison doing, because he only has 3 fingers, because Simpsons characters only have 3 fingers. Wait, is it only really 3? Yeah, that seems, plus thumbs. Oh, okay. That's so weird, I didn't know that, but that's ignorance for you, right? And that's on page 129. The impact of pop culture affects the way we perceive the world, but also how we connect with it. We see our ensemble connect over this small detail in the show, but it gives them the motivation to keep living in their harsh new reality. We can all relate to this impact that pop culture has, giving us the same courage to face our fears and stand up for what is right. Next, we examine the commercial sequences of Act 2 in Mr. Burns. We will now read a small excerpt from one of these commercials put on by our ensemble. Driving through the American South, Southwest, Southeast, across the plains, across the coast, straddling the borders, with the radio on. Pump up the volume, crank up the tunes. And that's page 184. Mr. Burns highlights another impactful phenomenon in pop culture, the use of commercials. Commercials are mostly forgotten as they interrupt and break away from what we are viewing. However, this break can also give the viewer a chance to soak in what they have seen or even draw the viewer in further. Commercials in Mr. Burns are present to relieve what TV was like before the apocalypse, but they also provide the readers with an opportunity to soak in the rest of the play. These commercials reflect what a commercial does in our real life, while also adding entertainment value through music, costumes, and enhancement of the story. The play changes over time, 72 years, becoming darker than what we remember of The Simpsons. Kill me now, Bart Simpson. Yes, kill me all you like, but don't be surprised when you and I meet again. I'm never leaving. I don't go away. I'm here for 1,000 years, 100,000, 1,000,000. I will be here, Bart Simpson, for forever. Mr. Burns dies. And that's from page 226. Mr. Burns gives us a dark and brutal shift for the pop culture icons, becoming something that is much less familiar to us. The dark shift reflects how our ensemble interpret their world, as it grows dark and gloomy surviving in this post-apocalyptic world. The shift also highlights how pop culture evolves based on our environment, while still holding on to key aspects. For example, the Simpson family never changing. Mr. Burns urges us to explore the themes of evolving stories, similar to how humans evolve over time. Pop culture changes with time, creating new pop cultures along the way, while still holding on to the key ingredients that make an icon stick. And moving on to our production pitch. Mr. Burns is a thrilling, absurdist work exploring the reconstruction of culture in a post-apocalyptic world. The show expresses the power of storytelling as an everlasting concept in human history and how its significance helps to construct lasting human tradition. For our first key element, we will talk about costuming. The costumes will represent different methods stories are told, specifically focusing on comedy. Each character costume will be brightly colored, and the pattern of the textile used will have prints of various notable comic strips from different points in history. The costumes themselves will be slightly oversized to present a clowny feel to add both humor and to reference another form of storytelling. For our key moment 2, we will talk about the set. The set will also show different ways stories are told, specifically focusing on historical stories. The wallpaper and set pieces will be plastered with torn up and burnt historical documents that have been recovered from the apocalypse. These serious documents will be fashioned and colored in a way to look as if the flats are comic book pages of history. Our other key moments and elements will be following this slide. And thank you for listening. We are Group 6.